So, ladies and gentlemen, back again for a short presentation on outcomes. We heard earlier that in many instances it's difficult to measure the impact that you have in the community. Thankfully, we do collect data every year and compare scores at the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And I do those analyses, the statistical analyses, and I'll share one of them with you shortly. But the results year in, year out demonstrate that you do have a very positive, very strong impact on student learning in Head Start, Early Head Start, and Early Head Start CCP. We also demonstrate every year that you have a very strong impact on families in Head Start, Early Head Start, and Early Head Start CCP. So that's the great news. How about a round of applause for everybody in the room? A special note I want to share with you, and I'm sorry I wasn't here this morning to hear the presentation by Ms. Morris, but a recent article in the Wall Street Journal about the infant mortality rate in the United States. Sadly, for the first time in 20 years, we saw an increase in the infant mortality rate nationally, a 3% increase nationally. So that's not good news, but the good news for the Early Head Start and Early Head Start CCP programs, we haven't lost, and I wish Dr. Kathy were here, she would confirm this, you haven't lost, since Kathy's been here, the 18 years, you've never lost a baby in Early Head Start. How fantastic is that? The rates are up nationally. The rates are higher for women of color, for families of color, and Early Head Start has never lost a baby. That's phenomenal news. Congratulations to everybody in Early Head Start. Now, I have another packet. I hope everybody has the packet. I was assured everybody has the packet. I looked, Kathy said she was sure everybody had the packet.
Nope, that's it. I guess you're done.
Where is the doctor? Maybe Dr. Kathy took off for.
Step out for fiscal.
Okay. Are there handouts that haven't been distributed?
No, you can see the electronic. You probably ask Tatiana.
No. Is there a way to project? We've got outstanding AV folks. Is there a way to project some of this on a screen? Do I have a thumb drive? No. Right. No, I was thinking something like an overhead that I could put it on a screen and show it. Okay. All right.
Are available at the gift shop. You can pick them up at the gift shop.
The gift shop. Okay. No. I asked as soon as I got here, do we have all the handouts, and I was assured that we. Well, but we need 250 copies. So, all right. So, I will read the questions to you. I'll read them to you. We'll get everybody a copy of the handout, but I'll read the questions to you. Where does funding to operate Head Start and Early Head Start come from? I'm hearing all kinds of things. You heard Kathy say earlier, Congress allocates the money to fund Head Start and Early Head Start. And where does Congress get the money? From taxpayers. Okay, so it's public funding. Let me ask this question. Again, it's in a handout packet. We'll make sure everybody gets a copy. Is it reasonable for Congress to hold Head Start and Early Head Start accountable for documenting student learning progress?
Yes.
Okay? They're giving us money to teach children. So it is reasonable for them to say, prove to us that you have taught children something. Okay, so it's reasonable. We all agree with that. What happens if Head Start or Early Head Start fails to document student learning progress? I heard somebody over here. The doors close. If we can't document that student learning has taken place, if we can't document that families have improved over the course of the year, the feds are intolerant of that failure and they shut you down. Have there been any Head Starts shut down in our general area the last few years? There have been. Michigan City had a Head Start for many years. Very sloppily operated. They didn't have good data documenting learning outcomes for children, documenting progress for families. The feds don't tolerate that. They shut it down. And Michigan City has been without a Head Start now for several years. How unfortunate. How about the migrant Head Start? Anybody know what happened to that recently? In LaVille, the migrant Head Start got shut down. The feds don't play games. They're very specific with their guidelines. They're very specific with what they want to see. And when they want to see it, and if you get sloppy, they shut you down. They don't play games. So this is a very, very serious issue. Because if we can't document progress in student learning and progress in families, we jeopardize funding for Head Start and Early Head Start. Here's an easy question. What's the primary tool that we use to measure student learning? The core. The core. Everybody, I'm sure, is familiar with the core. It's widely known, widely used throughout the country. So we use the core. Let me flip the page. Here's a question. How do we use the core to document student learning? How do we do that? I'll tell you how we do it. At the beginning of the year, the first core, we get all the kids for whom we have a total core. They have all the scores needed for core. We get all of those children together for Head Start, is what the example we'll talk about today. And we calculate the average total core score at the beginning of the year. Okay, but we have to have kids, we include kids that have all of their core scores, not just a part of the core, all of the core. We calculate an average total core score at the beginning of the year. We then compare that average at the beginning of the year with a similar average at the end of the year. All of the kids that have total cores at the end of the year, we get their scores and calculate an average. And then we look to see, is there a difference between the average at the beginning of the year and the average at the end of the year? And we test that difference for statistical significance. That's how we do it. Questions? Let me continue. Let me ask this question. About how many students participated in Head Start last year? Just a ballpark number. In Head Start. I pulled the number out of the report. Last year we had 747 747 who participated in Head Start. All right? Now here's a question for you. How would Congress react? How would you react if we did a study where we had total scores at time one, beginning of the year, we compared them with total scores at the end of the year? How would Congress react if we only had 7 students in our study? We only had 7 students. We only had 1% of the 747. Would they find that acceptable? No, they'd say, you gotta be kidding me. The sample size is too small, right? We only have 7 out of 747. Anyone would say, you would say, how can you draw conclusions based upon a sample size of 7? Here are the challenges that we faced in 2022, 2023, this past year. Remember, we're looking at total core at the beginning of the year compared with total core at the end of the year. Our sample size last year was 340 out of 747. It's about 45%. It's well above the 1% that we were talking about, but we had fewer than half of the children who had total scores on core at time one, and we compare them with total core scores at the end of the school year. We only had 340 out of 747. That's 45.5%. Okay? We'd like it to be a whole lot higher. We had last year 3 sites that didn't have any students.
No.
3 sites that didn't have any students who had complete scores at the beginning of the year and complete scores at the end of the year. And we had, sadly, several classrooms, and I'm talking now about Head Start, several classrooms that had no students with complete scores at the beginning of the year and complete scores at the end of the year. So we have some challenges before us to get that percentage up. If the percentage drops too low, and the feds don't tell you exactly how low is low, but if that percentage drops too low, the feds will conclude this is not compelling evidence that you've taught children anything because your sample size is too small. A huge challenge. We had 45% of all the Head Start students with total scores at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. 3 sites with no students and several classrooms that didn't have any students. So we as a consortium need to address that issue. And we want everybody to think about potential solutions. What can we do to get that number higher? Yes, ma'am. Let me hand this to you. Yeah, sure. So people can hear it.
Okay, one of the things that I'm finding is that in order to give observations in the system, the child has to be there. And some of our children are not showing up, so you cannot put observations in when somebody's not there. So after so many days, it seems like to me it should be dropped out. Because that will help raise everything.
Okay. Okay. Okay? Yolanda, Nurse Yo.
That is part of the solution, and that is a great answer. That is actually part of our policy. But the other part of the solution is we have to show up and get the job done. If they're there for one day, jump in and get it done. No. This is not personal. This is for all of us. It's not personal. Just like you made your comment, this is not personal. This is all of us.
They didn't have this handout.
Each and every last one of us. Every department, every person, every content area, every content manager, the director, nobody's excluded. The subs, the teaching staff, the parents, everybody as a whole. Because the federal government is not going to say, well, this content area didn't do her job. It's all or nothing. Because we are a team, right? And teamwork makes the dream work. Every time.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks. It is a challenge for all of us in the room. And we're not picking on anybody. We're saying we have a challenge. We need to work together to get those numbers up, because if they fall too low, at some point the feds will say this is unacceptable as evidence that learning took place. I'll do one more comment, and then I promised Dr. Phil I'd be done by 11.
So this is my first time using core. I was just wondering, when you say completed observations for each student, do you mean each subject has to be a note inside to say it's completed, like it's completed the assessment and completion?
Right.
So each subject needs to be filled out for each student.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So we have, I told you what the numbers were. We will make sure everybody gets a copy of this so you see what the numbers are. We as a team have to do a better job, get the percentage of students who have complete cores at the beginning of the year and complete cores at the end of the year. We all have to work together to get that percentage up, or we risk the feds saying the sample size is too small. The statistical results, and everybody will get a copy of these, the statistical results for Head Start last year were outstanding. They were outstanding. Based on 347 students, but for those 347 students, I can conclude that there is solid statistical evidence of huge gains. The percentage gain from the beginning of the year to the end of the year was 55%. That's a huge gain over the year. The results were statistically significant, meaning that they were unlikely to have occurred by chance. So I, as an evaluator, can conclude Head Start had a very positive impact on student learning in the previous academic year. And that's what I did conclude. I drew the same conclusions for Early Head Start and for Early Head Start CCP. So we had outstanding results. Our only, or my primary concern is if the sample size gets too small, at some point the feds will say this is not acceptable evidence that learning took place. And as Nurse Yo said, and I heartily endorse it, it's a challenge for all of us. We're a team. We all have to work to make sure we get more completed cores at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. Questions? Any other general questions for me before I turn it over to Dr. Phil? Okay, yes, all the way in the back. Can you blast it out? I don't have the statistics with me, but I could get those statistics. I only brought statistics in the packet for illustrative purposes for Head Start. But we have similar reports for Early Head Start and Early Head Start CCP, and the results were equally impressive. Yes, ma'am. Okay, thanks, folks. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Phil.